me, your me, Louie T. Welcome to the NFL news you may have missed since we've been away, and it's been quite some time. I've been pumping out consistent content since the NFL draft, primarily the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, which I am in the midst of right now as we speak, putting a nice, pretty little bow on that, almost at the conclusion of that series. Want to wrap that up before we get to training camp, which will be here before you know it. We're about 2 weeks away from every team being in training camp, and then Hall of Fame game, and then all of a sudden preseason, and boom, we've got football for the next 4 months into the foreseeable future. So I'm excited. I know you're excited. And so I want to talk about some topics that may have slipped under the radar. Football fans kind of getting away, summertime, lots of things to do. It's easy to sweep some of these things that have transpired under the rug, but that's why your man Louie T is here to inform you. Got a nice, healthy show lined up for you. Of course, today being the day where the franchise tag deadline was met, and you had opportunities to sign players who were under the franchise tag and reach long-term deals with them. There were 3 players that were under the franchise tag looking for long-term deals. Of course, Kirk Cousins, the first time a quarterback has been franchise tagged 2 consecutive years in a row. He's looking to make history, and he did not sign a long-term deal with the Redskins, and I don't think many Redskins fans anticipated the deal happening. Nor did a deal for Le'Veon Bell happen in Pittsburgh, which was a surprise to me. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And Trumaine Johnson, I knew he wasn't going to get a deal done in Los Angeles as well. We'll break down all of those players and their situations a little bit later on in the show. Also want to tackle some other topics of discussion. More trouble in Big D. Ezekiel Elliott seems to be able or can't stay out of trouble. It seems like he got into another altercation. Dallas Cowboys have had a rough offseason with a number of suspensions. Will Ezekiel Elliott be added to that list? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, Dave Gettleman, my guy Dave Gettleman. You know what? I hate to say I told you so, but you know I'd be lying if I said I hate to say I told you so. We're going to talk about Dave Gettleman and his ousting in Carolina a little bit later on. And then first and foremost, I want to talk about John Dorsey and his firing in Kansas City. Kansas City Chiefs! That was a surprise to many, including myself. And I want to talk about that situation and how that unfolded, because it just seemed to come out of nowhere, much like the Dave Gettleman firing in Carolina. This is a really odd time. You don't generally have a lot of news in the NFL after the draft is commenced. Generally, there's not much going on. You get these mini camps, and then it kind of is a little bit of a break and a lull, and then you finally make it to training camp. But this offseason, we've had 2 GMs be ousted, which is just out of this world in terms of what you're accustomed to. GMs don't get fired after the draft. GMs don't get fired right before the draft, when we've seen 4 GMs get canned, 1 in Buffalo, 1 in Washington prior to the draft, and 2 after the draft come in. So again, these are rare firings. You don't see these types of things happening at the times that they've happened, but it's situations that, behind the scenes, things are a little bit more dire than it may appear to those of us on the outside looking in. And so in John Dorsey's case, I think it all kind of started with Clark Hunt, the owner of the Chiefs, saying, look, I want more control over what's going on in this organization. The Scott Todd Haley situation was a disaster. The Chiefs ended up 2-14 in the first overall pick by the time those 2 were done in Kansas City. And he didn't want this organization heading in that direction. A lot of that happened right under his nose. And he said, the next time I hire a general manager and a head coach, I want to know exactly what's going on. I want my ear to be down to the street. I want to have the pulse, not only of the team in the locker room, but I want to have the pulse of what's going on in the front office. And so he was a little bit more involved in what was going on. And he knew exactly what was going on. And I don't know if John Dorsey knew just how much Clark Hunt knew what was going on. But in any event, John Dorsey was looked at in league circles as a great scout and evaluator of talent, okay, but not as good with the books. And so he was a guy that kind of was sloppy with some of the things he was doing behind the scenes. None bigger than the salary cap, which the Chiefs have been really, really bad at over the last few years. And some of the deals that he handed out were, helping to cause this salary cap problem that they were having. You look at the deals that were given out to Tardif Duvernay. you look at the deal that was given out to, Duvernay Tardif. And you know I love that name, Laurent Duvernay Tardif. And you look at the deal that was given out to Eric Fisher. Those were big deals to guys that you look at and you say, do these guys really need to be paid right now? I think both of those guys were in the first year of eligibility to get new deals. Eric Fisher, in the case of him, this is a first-round pick, a guy that was selected first overall. There was no need to go and tear up his contract and give him more new money when you had the option to let him ride out an extra year and then pick up the option or decline it. So you had 2 more years effectively of Eric Fisher before you really needed to make a decision on him, which I don't think the Chiefs were even at a crossroads with him quite yet, because you still didn't know what this guy was. You didn't need to pay him starters money and give him extra money. That wasn't a situation that needed to be addressed at that time. Not when you got Eric Berry and Justin Houston over here starving to get paid, and you're paying guys, and it all started to make sense to Clark Hunt. Oh, so I see what you're doing. You're paying the guys that you drafted, guys that you want everyone. And look, general managers are always looking for acceptance. They're always looking for people to agree with the moves that they made, okay? So when you see a GM giving a guy an extra opportunity, you know, when you see a GM extending a guy that you say to yourself, why are you extending this guy? You can always trace it back to, did he draft that player? Did he believe in that guy? Does he want everybody else to believe in what he's doing? And so that was one of those situations where you give out deals to guys that you didn't necessarily need to give deals to, but you drafted those guys, so you want the organization to believe in those guys, because again, GMs are always looking for validation. Yes, I want you to validate these moves that I've made, because GMs are always in constant flux of looking for that validation, because that's how they keep their job. If I'm doing a good job as a general manager, that's how I stay employed. And so it was a situation where you look at guys that needed to be paid, and these are big time players in Barry and Houston, and they're looking for deals. Meanwhile, you don't have any salary cap because of some of the bad deals you've done, including giving offensive linemen that didn't need to be done yet deals. So it all came to a head when GM Chris Ballard left for Indy. And I think a lot of people thought that John Dorsey was a little sloppy behind the scenes. Again, it's a guy that's a scout that isn't necessarily a great GM. He's not a guy that is organized behind the scenes, just more of a talent evaluator, okay? And so when you take away the guy that was holding everything together in GM and Chris Ballard and give him an opportunity to be his own GM in Indy, I think the disorganization of John Dorsey really started to shine through. And now all of a sudden you get a disconnect from the rest of the guys in that front office, and you started to see the salary cap go to hell. You see some decisions being made, like the releasing and how it was done of Jeremy Maclin. I think that was one of those situations where you scratch your head and say, you called him and you sent him a text message? You left him a message and got rid of him? Like, it was a very disingenuous way to go about your business. And if you're a GM, you can't do business like that in the league. And so it all came to a head. The Chiefs decided to part ways with John Dorsey, and it's an unfortunate situation, because if you look at the talent on that Chiefs roster, he's done a really good job, and that's the one thing he's good at, is identifying talent. No one's ever going to take that away from John Dorsey. It's all of the business behind that, though, that he struggles with, and maybe he's nothing more than a scout. Okay, maybe he's nothing more than an executive of player personnel. Maybe that's his job title. Maybe that's what he's supposed to be. But maybe he's not GM material, and we'll see what happens. He may land on his feet somewhere else and get another opportunity. However, Kansas City just didn't work out for John Dorsey, but there's a lot of talent left behind, but there's also some salary cap nonsense left behind by John Dorsey as well. As we move on to Dave Gettleman in Carolina, and that's a situation that just happened, it seems like overnight, but again, this has been building for a while, and you know how I feel. And if you don't know how I feel about Dave Gettleman, just go back in the archives, man. I've been talking about Dave Gettleman. I've been killing Dave Gettleman since he took the job in Carolina and started to do nonsense. And to me, it all started with his drafts and him coming in and being one of these GMs that only making 5. So let's take a look at these drafts, shall we? Because I've been really big on beating up Dave Gettleman over his drafts. And you started 2013, which was his first draft as the general manager of the Carolina Panthers. What do you know? 5-player draft. Again, the magic number for me is 7. You get 7 picks to start with. It's nice if you come away with 7 players, but if you don't, let's say you just come away with 6. 6 is the minimum amount of players that you need to select in order to keep your roster healthy enough so that if you have injuries, you've got young guys at key positions that provide you with depth. When you don't have enough draft picks, you start finding yourself in positions that when guys go down at key positions, you're not going to have adequate backups. And that's what happened to this Panthers team in 2016 as we saw those injuries start to mount, lack of depth at key positions, and that accounted for that 6-10 record in Carolina. But let's start with the 2013 draft. 5 players, okay? Now we all assumed, okay, Panthers need some offensive line help. Okay, Jordan Gross getting up there in age and he would eventually retire. Got to get some offensive linemen. So what do? They take 2 defensive linemen. Okay, fine. Both of them actually turned out to be pretty good. And Starla Tulele and K'Wan Short. So you don't really have a problem with it. But then you settle on a lineman in the 3rd round. Straight trash. A.J. Klein no longer here. He went to New Orleans in the offseason. And Kenyon Barner just really never worked out in Carolina. And so you move on to the 2014 draft. Hey, they drafted 6 players. Hey, it's enough, but I want more. But okay, fine. I'll take 6. All right, so everyone's saying, all right, Jordan Gross finally retires. You need a left tackle, right? You need a left tackle. You get a wide receiver. Okay, fine. All right, Jordan Gross is gone. You need a left tackle. You take Coney Ely in the 2nd round. Okay, so then you go 3rd round, Trey Turner. He turns out to be a guard. So you still need a tackle. It doesn't work out. Trey Boston, I'm not a Trey Boston fan, but he's still on the roster. Coney Ely, he's now off in New England. You trade him away for what? So you could swap him out with the Texas A&M defender that I'm not too brash on and too bullish on. Deshaun Hall. I'm not really a big fan of that pick. You swap out Coney Ely for Deshaun Hall. Not a fan of that at all. But in any event, Benet Wickery hasn't panned out really. Tyler Gaffney never played a down for the Carolina Panthers. As we move on to the 2015 NFL draft, what do you know? We're back to 5 selections for Dave Gettleman. Again, I killed him for this. Then okay, gotta get a tackle, right? Wrong. We take a linebacker. As if they didn't already have enough linebackers, they take another one in Shaq Thompson. He's been pretty good for them though, so I'm not going to kill him for that. Devin Funchess, they trade up in the draft for Devin Funchess. He's been okay, but damn, I mean, you need offensive line help and you go up and get another damn receiver. Okay, fine, whatever. Darrell Williams in the 4th round. I still don't know where he is in his development for this team. David Mayo, another damn linebacker. You could use some corner depth. You could use some offensive line depth. Instead, you go another damn linebacker. And then Cameron Artis-Payne, who's been solid, but doesn't knock my socks off at the running back position. As we go to the 2016 NFL draft for this team, you need offensive line help in the worst way. And what do? Vernon Butler, defensive tackle, yet again, more defensive line when you've already got defensive line pressure up front in the interior, especially. Now, if this was a defensive end, maybe I would understand it, but no, it's a defensive tackle, as if you don't already have enough defensive tackle and beef inside. Then this is the offseason, of course, where you get rid of Josh Norman, so you would think your 1st round pick would have been a corner. Nope. You spend your 2nd round pick on a corner that no one was going to take in the 2nd round but you in James Bradbury. Now, I will say I do like James Bradbury, and I do think he's going to end up being a really good corner in this league, but still, I didn't love the pick then, and I'm not in love with the pick now. Darryl Worley, you follow that up with another cornerback, and then another cornerback in Zach Sanchez before getting another tight end in Bo Sandlin to round out that draft. And I haven't broken down the 2017 NFL draft in my series yet, but I've already done the video, and so I'm going to be talking about Gettleman. I actually thought it was a really good draft by the Panthers, so I'm anxious to see how that goes in Carolina. But needless to say, we've seen what he's done in the draft. I've never been a fan of Gettleman. I think he's a bully. I think he's one of these guys that because he's been in the league so long, he thinks he's entitled to something. And what he says goes. And if you don't like it, you can hit the door, and you've seen it with veterans. Speaking of which, a lot of people took solace in seeing Dave Gettleman exit stage left in Carolina. As you can see some of these tweets up on the screen, I didn't like how he did Steve Smith, especially. That was my biggest one of the veterans that got cut loose. D'Angelo Williams, I didn't have a problem with him not being retained in Carolina, but again, there's a way that you do things, and I didn't like the way that they did him either. But you know, the Josh Norman thing was a fiasco. It was a bully move. It was a bully tactic by Dave Gettleman. He didn't really want to keep Josh Norman in Carolina, because if he did, he would have found a way to work it out. You don't just cut a guy because you can't work with his agent. And I don't think he tried hard enough. He just felt like, okay, you're asking for X amount of dollars. I'm not paying it to you. You don't want to budge. Okay, see you later. And so it's those types of moves that has seen Dave Gettleman fall out of favor with just the fans in Carolina, not necessarily the owner and Jerry Richardson. But then you see fan favorites like Davis, your linebacker, and Greg Olsen, who are looking for new deals. And I know that Davis is 34 years old, but he's still playing at a very high level. So this is a fan favorite that's looking for a new deal. You got Greg Olsen, who's still playing at a Pro Bowl type level. Probably still got a good 4 or 5 years left in him, depending on if he's able to stay healthy. He's looking for a new deal, even though he's still got some years left on his deal. He's looking for a new deal. These are guys you want to take care of. They're big pillars in the community. And again, Dave Gettleman kind of leaving these guys out in the cold. This is what he's done in Carolina. I don't like Dave Gettleman. I don't like his ways, more specifically. I don't have a problem with the man Dave Gettleman because I don't know the man Dave Gettleman. I don't like his practices. I don't like the way he conducts himself in business. And I had a feeling that this would happen. I didn't know it was going to happen when it happened, but I said eventually they're going to get tired of Dave Gettleman and his bully tactics and his egotistical ways in Carolina, and they're going to show him the door. I didn't expect it to happen now, but it happened, and I can't say that I'm surprised that he was finally ousted. And I can't say that I'm upset either, because I didn't like the way he conducts business. And it was his time, I guess, was up in Carolina. And what goes around comes around. And it was time for Dave Gettleman to be shown the door in Carolina. So you know how I feel there. Panthers fans, I don't want to hear nothing from the Panthers fans in terms of they don't like Dave Gettleman and this, that, and the third, because they were defending Dave Gettleman tooth and nail. They didn't let anybody talk about Dave Gettleman. They rationalized all of his irrational moves. And so, if anything, I just want to hear silence from the Carolina Panthers fans, because a lot of them tolerated Dave Gettleman's nonsense. Even though they knew what he was doing was wrong, consistently, they still backed him and went with the Dave We Trust type of moniker. So I feel good about this move, because in order for them to have harmony and unity in Carolina, you got to get rid of the guy that keeps stirring the pot and making things sour in Carolina. And that guy was Dave Gettleman. And so now maybe Steve Smith can come home and retire that number. D'Angelo Williams already said, hey, I'll come back, even though I don't think the Panthers want him back. He says, look, I can take them off the list of teams that I don't want to play for anymore. It's all starting to warm up in Carolina. And I think it all started with Dave Gettleman being shown the door in Carolina. Be anxious to see what they do, because they had another front office member a little earlier in the offseason retire, and so they didn't replace their vice president. Now you don't have a GM. I'm anxious to see what the Panthers decide to do with their front office and what types of moves they try to do, because again, this is a team. Forget the front office. This is a team that's going in a different direction. I talk about that in my draft 2017 draft wrap-up series video about the direction of this team and how I'm excited to see where it's going. And I actually thought Dave Gettleman did a fabulous job. For the first time, I was willing to give Dave Gettleman some credit. And just like that, poof, bow, bang, he's gone. And I'm not sad to see him go. Dallas Cowboys having a tumultuous offseason. What's new? The latest casualty, David Irving, a guy that we saw come on like gangbusters, had a highlight game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and really started to rev it up for the Cowboys at that midpoint towards the end of the season. Looked like a guy that could start to maybe get some pressure for them on the quarterback at a position where they're lacking a lot of depth and really good football players. And he gets suspended now, busted for PED usage. And so this is a guy that's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. There's a long laundry list of guys going to miss the first 4 games of the season for the Cowboys. could Ezekiel Elliott be joining that list of guys going to miss a few games to start the season? We knew about his troubled past, or at least the perception of a troubled past coming into the league with a domestic violence dispute claim against him from an ex-girlfriend leading up to the draft. Nothing was ever founded there, but you know, that stigma never really leaves. Then when you have the situation like we had with him at the St. Patrick's Day little boat ride that he was on, and he pulls down the girl's shirt and exposes her breast. And now you're having a situation where he's at a club in Dallas, gets into it with a patron, reportedly punched that guy in the face, in his nose. No charges have been filed. Right now, nothing is being filed against Ezekiel Elliott. And so right now, he's not being brought up on any charges. But this starts to beg the question, is this a guy that's going to be able to stay out of trouble? Because the talent is undeniable, okay? If you're talking from a best running back in the league perspective, that guy is Le'Veon Bell. If you're talking about most talented running back in the league, that guy may be Ezekiel Elliott. There's no doubting what this guy brings to the table on the field. It's off the field that I think everyone is concerned about with Ezekiel Elliott. And right now, he can't seem to stay out of trouble. This is one of those Jerry Jones reclamation projects potentially where he might have to hire some outside guys to follow him around to keep him out of trouble. I don't know, but right now he doesn't seem to be able to do that for himself. And so maybe Jerry Jones and that staff may have to intervene because he's too important a piece to this football team for them to lose him for any amount of time. You think Dak Prescott's that good? Take away Ezekiel Elliott and see how good Dak Prescott is then. I don't think the Cowboys nor their fan base want to find out what that situation looks like. They need to keep Ezekiel Elliott's nose clean off the field in order for him to produce on it. And finally, franchise tag players that this was the deadline, looking for long-term deals. You had 3 guys in particular really looking to break the bank with huge long-term deals. Of course, the most notable, Kirk Cousins, quarterback of the Washington Redskins, going into the 2nd straight franchise tag season. Unprecedented territory for a quarterback in this league. No quarterback has ever played under the franchise tag 2 consecutive years. Kirk Cousins will be the first. He was already looking to set history. Him and his agent had already said, Mike McCartney had already said, look, we got an opportunity to really step the bar up for the players in the Players Association with this deal that I could potentially get, I being Kirk Cousins. And so we already knew that it was going to be a long shot. The Redskins would have to come with an insane deal that really just knocked the socks off of not only Kirk Cousins and his agent, but the NFL world to get a deal done. And as we've seen over the last couple of years, the Redskins just weren't going to do that. And so we can say that out of this whole situation, we were able to see what the Redskins were offering. And I can say, as a Redskins fan, I'm actually quite pleased at how little has come out around the Redskins camp of late. There's not a lot of leakage. There's not a lot of things being given to the media as far as what the Redskins' plans are. We didn't even know the number that the Redskins were offering until Bruce Allen released a statement saying, hey, we offered Kirk Cousins $53 million at signing, which would have been the most money ever given to an NFL player at signing. In terms of just signing their name, you get a $53 million check. But they were overall looking to guarantee him $72 million. That's not enough. That's not nearly enough. Andrew Luck got $87 million guaranteed. $72 million, not nearly enough, okay? Kirk Cousins is going to make upwards of 90, maybe even closer to $100 million guaranteed next season if he balls out once more. And the overall contract length and money wasn't disclosed, but I mean, you hear $72 million guaranteed. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of a 5-year deal, $125 million, $72 million of it guaranteed, which is close to the Derek Carr deal. But again, Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are in two different circumstances and positions. Kirk Cousins holds all the leverage. Derek Carr had leverage, but it wasn't enough to the point. You got to realize Kirk Cousins made damn near $20 million last year. He's going to make 24 this year. That's $44 million. That's pretty damn good for a guy that was making $660,000 just 2 seasons ago, which was where Derek Carr was as a second-round pick, not making much money. So he was really inclined to do a deal with the Oakland Raiders and try to get that money now, because we saw him get injured last year, which kind of speeds up that process. If you're Derek Carr, look, I got injured last year. I don't know how I'm going to respond to this injury. I need to get paid, and I need to get paid right now. Kirk Cousins in a totally different position. He's making $24 million this year. He made 20 last year. He's got money in the bank secure. He's already secured the bag. All right. So he's not worried about a long-term security. He's already secured the bag to the tune of 20 last year. All right. And after Uncle Sam sticks his hand in his pocket, he still got $12 million of that money in the bank. Okay. So you're talking about a guy that secured at least 12 last year. He's going to make another 24 after Uncle Sam sticks his hand in that. You're talking about a guy that's going to walk away with another 14. So you're talking about $26 million net over the last 2 years. This man's not hurting for any bread. So there was no amount of money the Redskins could have offered him to get him to give away his option next year of being able to hit it big. And you're going to have teams like the Rams and the 49ers and the Browns and the Jets with a ton of cap space with no quarterback looking to fill that vacancy with a guy like Kirk Cousins. And I think he's going to go to San Francisco. I've said it all along. As a Redskin fan, I've already told you how I feel. The only way that Kirk Cousins comes back to this football team is if the Redskins come dangerously close to doing something big and Kirk starts feeling the love, okay, and it's reciprocal. The organization loves Kirk. Kirk starts to love the organization. Everybody embraces him, and the Redskins come really close to getting something done in 2017. They got to make the playoffs. They need to win a game in the playoffs for Kirk to feel like, man, we're damn close. And I'm really feeling the love from the organization now. And I love them. They love me. Let's get something done. And you're still going to have to pay this man the most money of any player in NFL history. That's not going to change. But he'll be willing to sign that deal versus I don't think he wants to come back at this point. If you ask Kirk Cousins right now and you gave him truth serum, I think he'd tell you, I don't want to play for the Redskins right now. So bottom line is, yeah, he said, oh yeah, I'm willing to come back and play for the Redskins next year. That's still on the table. That sounds good. That's what he's supposed to say. Bottom line is, Kirk Cousins wasn't going to sign a long-term deal. He didn't need to. He's got the most leverage any NFL player has had in the history of the game, and he's got to use it. And if he's smart, he'll exercise that option, and that's what he did by not signing a long-term deal with the Redskins, even though they offered him a deal. That deal wasn't anywhere near what it was going to take to get Kirk Cousins to sign on the dotted line. Redskins just looking to save face and look good to the fan base like, hey, we tried. We gave it a run. Kirk turned us down. You can't say that we didn't try to get Kirk back here in D.C. because we tried. You didn't try hard enough. You should have gotten this deal done last offseason, but that's another discussion for another day. As we move on to Le'Veon Bell, of all of the guys that had an opportunity to strike a deal before this deadline, he was the one that I thought was going to get done. Now, his is the one that if you're looking at these guys and how much they're going to make, Kirk Cousins, of course, the top 5 salaries of the quarterbacks in the league, but then you have to give him that 20 or 30% increase from the last year's franchise tag, which gets him to $24 million this year. Le'Veon Bell's only scheduled to make $12.1 million under this franchise tag, which again, that's a lot of money. Don't get it twisted, but the running back position isn't one that is highly paid. So $12.1 million in the grand scheme of things is not going to kill the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so if they didn't reach a long-term deal with him, which they wanted to, it wasn't going to kill them necessarily. And so he was the one that I thought was going to get done. I thought that the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell were going to be in heavy talks and something would get done right before the deadline hit, and it didn't happen. And I was surprised. So he still hasn't signed his franchise tag. I'm assuming he'll maybe milk it for all it's worth now, maybe hold out of training camp for a little while and then show up, sign a deal, and then get to work. We'll see how long he drags that out before he actually signs the deal and returns to work. As far as Trumaine Johnson is concerned, in Los Angeles with the Rams, I knew that this deal wasn't going to get done. Now, this is one of those deals where you're like, hey, they need to find a way to get this done. $16.75 million, that's a lot of money. And, you know, the cornerback position is one of those positions that garners a lot of money. And so for a guy like Trumaine Johnson, this is why I knew it wasn't going to get done. They still don't know in Los Angeles if this guy's a lockdown #1 shutdown corner. Okay, when he had his best production in Los Angeles from 2013 to 2015, it was when he was the #2 corner opposite of Janoris Jenkins. Janoris Jenkins moves on to New York. He becomes a #1 guy, and he only gets 1 interception in addition to not being able to stay healthy. So now you question, are you the guy or aren't you? And so there's still not a clear definitive answer there for the Rams. So they don't want to overcommit to this guy. Also, you got to look at Wade Phillips coming in with his new defensive scheme. It's a lot of man-to-man coverage. So they're going to find out what Trumaine Johnson is all about, because Wade Phillips relies heavily on his corners to hold it down. We saw it in Denver. We saw it in Houston. We know what this guy's about. He's going to ask a lot of his corners, as he likes to blitz and be aggressive. He's going to ask his corners to be able to hold it down on the outsides. And that's going to ask a lot of Trumaine Johnson in 2017. And if he is, in fact, the guy that they've thought he was over the last 2 years, which is why they franchise him, they will give him that long-term money once they figure out if he can stand up to the pressure of being a #1 corner in this league. Right now, they're not sure. Wade Phillips is going to surely find out for them, because he's going to put Trumaine Johnson to the test. He must first stay healthy. He must second perform. If he can do those two things in 2017, I think these two teams, or this team and player in Trumaine Johnson and the Rams, will find long-term deal in each other's future at the end of the season. But as for Kirk Cousins, I don't expect him back in DC unless a miracle happens, and that miracle is the Redskins win a bunch of games, make it to the playoffs, and win a playoff game. Le'Veon Bell's going to stay in Pittsburgh. I don't think he's going anywhere. And Trumaine Johnson, if he has a big season under Wade Phillips in Los Angeles, he will get the money he's looking for in a long-term deal as well in the offseason. So that's all of the news that has transpired since the last time we've talked. It's been a while. We're going to take a nice little break. I'm going to wrap up this series, and then we're going to get down to business as the training camp and preseason gets underway. You're going to start to see this face a lot more often. But if it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. I am excited to see your face and be back in the place. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Leave your comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear how you guys feel about all of these different things that have transpired in this offseason. I'll see you next time.